Governments of Commonwealth states pledge to uphold this charter for progress and prosperity of member countries.
Over 50 countries of the world that belong to the Commonwealth. So, if you are a Commonwealth country and you are left out of it, then you are like a pariah nation.
Federal Executive Council expresses optimism that ASUU strike will soon be over.
(2023) general elections. DSS advises politicians to play by the rules.
And Good Morning Nigeria today beams its searchlight on issues in power supply.
Now, it is trite that electric power is critical to powering, if you may, the modern economy. This is because virtually all aspects of operations in the modern economy rely on stable and steady electric power supply.
Well, you're right indeed. And although Nigeria has been generating electricity through the national grid, experts have the opinion that the inability of successive governments to grow the power infrastructure in the country over the decades actually accounts for the slow pace of development in the sector, and of course the result is the inadequate and, if you like, epileptic water power supply.
No question about that. Even water that you were saying also relies on electric power for generation as well as supply. Now, not even the privatization of the sector has improved the situation. Now, when the then Power Holding Company of Nigeria was unbundled and sold to 11 distribution and 7 generating companies known as Discos and Gencos, what we expected was that there would be an improvement in the national power situation. But what we do here these days and what we have been experiencing is the frequent collapse of the national grid, which is the transmission infrastructure. This year alone, there have been no fewer than 6 times that the national grid has collapsed. Kilian?
Well, it's indeed not fun, the fact that when national grid collapses, the nation is left in darkness. There is no other source. When we ask, why would the nation have just one source of power supply? Is that obtainable in other climes? So these are some of the issues we've been looking at. But in fact, the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) has on several occasions called on the federal government to reverse the privatization deal of the power sector, stating that the exercise has not improved but worsened electricity supply in the country.
No question about that. I mean, we all sometimes romanticize about NEPA, even though NEPA at its worst performance was referred to as never expect power always. But the case that you just talked about is that the new owners have not in any way made any dramatic improvement to the country's power situation. And recently, power generation on a particular day was said to have crashed to as low as 9 megawatts. 9, Kieran, I'm sure you remember that. And this was from an equally embarrassing peak of 3,700 megawatts. So when the power generation in the country went as low as 9, that could, of course, have been virtually zero. And it caused blackouts in various states across the country. This was until the situation was temporarily salvaged. But again, you add to that the scarcity of petrol, the increase in the price of diesel is also taking a toll on the ease of doing business. That's because once there is no public power supply, people want to rely on their own generators. But unfortunately, diesel is around about 700, 800 naira per liter, and petrol scarcity has also taken a hold in parts of the country. Kieran.
And oil power supply is inadequate. People say the problem of metering and estimated billing remain a monster yet to be conquered. Now, these challenges also trigger inflation as businesses are compelled to increase prices of their goods and services in order to break even.
No question about that. Well, these issues and more we will engage our guests with in our conversation segment just to find out exactly what is happening, Kieran, in the power sector. And is there a pathway out of the current situation? This year in particular, as we noted at the beginning, you've had no fewer than 6 occasions when the national grid collapsed and power supply, again, as we mentioned, dipped to as low as 9 megawatts. That's just below 10 megawatts by a country of 200 million people and several businesses, the largest economy on the African continent. What can be done? It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Welcome to the program. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umar. It's also my pleasure to welcome you to the program. I'm reaching you live from our headquarters studios here in Abuja, the nation's capital. We'll also bring you other segments that will make today's package. For now, let's bring in our colleague Comfort Amodu, who has the morning news highlights. Hello, Comfort.
Good morning, Kieran and Kingsley. Now let's bring you the news. President Muhammadu Buhari is in Kigali, Rwanda, ahead of the 26th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Chobham. Our correspondent reports that the meeting is being hosted in Africa for the first time since 2007.
Over 50 countries of the world that belong to the Commonwealth. So, if you are a Commonwealth country and you are left out of it, then you are like a pariah nation. So, it is very important that the Nigerian president is there. He is going to make keynote addresses. He's going to talk on key issues like curbing the malaria threat in Africa. He's going to talk about the post-COVID economy. He's going to talk about climate. He's going to talk about security. The theme is delivering a common future. So he's going to talk around that theme.
And President Buhari has reiterated his resolve to ensure the nation unite as one nation and not be divided by obviously planned and politically motivated criminals. In a statement, President Muhammadu Buhari expressed the beliefs that religious freedom, the nation's diversity, are what makes Nigeria great and strong. He described the perpetrators as cowards, weak and wicked men with guns, murdering unarmed women and children at their places of worship. The president explains that cowards will be punished for their crimes and that justice will be served as formidable security and intelligence forces are involved in that endeavor. The president enjoins all Nigerians to come together and remember the victims and their families in their prayers. The House of Representatives is of the opinion that increasing the number of recruits into the service of the various security agencies will further enhance the fight against insecurity. This came up when the representative, Bulus Maron, brought to the attention of the House of the abduction by bandits of a traditional ruler in Plateau State.
More than 40 in number came heavily armed, shooting sporadically and firing gunshot, which left the community scared, helpless, and eventually went away with the traditional ruler.
The Office of the National Security Advisor, through the Office of the Director of JSS, and I want to tell you, they have done more than enough, those two. The information gathering and intelligence is perfect. At times they give the direction and even where they are meeting. But it's the implementing agency, where even if you are going to recruit the entire villages now and give them this like arms, somebody carrying an arm, a gun that can discharge 100 bullets in one round, How will you face it?
The Borno model that I want to recommend for the state governments in the various affected states to equally fund and support is the formation of a very robust vigilante groups.
Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed says the Buhari administration will continue to give support to states irrespective of a party in power. The minister also discloses that the Federal Executive Council has approved a memo presented by the Ministry of Works in favor of Yobe State for a refund of money expended on road projects on behalf of the federal government.
That was set up to inspect the claim. They were actually found to be true. They were reviewed, and from the 20 billion they asked for, and certified 18 billion naira as refund due to Yobe State.
And before things went as planned, the ongoing industrial action by academic staff union of universities may soon be laid to rest. Minister of Labour and Employment Chris Ngige says government is calling for a meeting with all stakeholders to further iron out the grey areas, if any. Briefing the press at the presidential villa in Abuja after the Federal Executive Council meeting, the minister says it is untrue that no one is talking to the union, stressing that the Salaries and Wages Commission, NIDA, and the union are currently working on the right payment platform, which would be useful to all the unions.
We're taking it step by step so that we don't ruffle feathers. We are interested in our children going back to school. We are not giving any preferential treatment to anybody. The remuneration being looked at, if government decide to up, which they will do, which government is ready to do, if we decide to raise their packages, it will be.
Intending international travelers in Edo and neighboring states can now breathe a sigh of relief in processing and issuance of international passports. This is because Edo State now has a production center for the enhanced electronic passport, which has been rolled out in the state by the Minister of Interior, Ogbeni Arabishola. And now, barely 8 months to 2023 general elections, the Department of State Service is appealing to Nigerians to shun violence, play the game by the rules, and say no to violence. Public Relations Officer of the DSS, Dr. Peter Funaya, rolls out the message at a briefing in Abuja.
We have to live in peace, in tolerance, and in love. Shown like we have stated earlier, fake news, hate speech, and indeed every act that will make us live in fear or distrust or disharmony.
Troops of 13th Brigade operating under command of 82 Division Nigerian Army on Tuesday, 21st of June, intercepted a Toyota Camry car with registration number JAL492AA laden with assorted munitions while en route with Tanga village towards Obudu Mountains in Cross River State. Troops deployed at forward operating base, a man attempted to stop the vehicle at the checkpoints, but the driver evaded the checking point and zoomed off. The drivers compelled the troops to open fire on the tires of the vehicle, thereby immobilizing it. Through a thorough search conducted on the vehicle revealed it was conveying 72 improvised explosive device charges, 121 dynamite, liquid, 200 rounds of 7.62 mm NATO, and 82 rounds of 7.6 mm And the ammunition and other items recovered in the intercepted vehicle are military uniforms and kits. Members of the public are urged to continue to support the troops with credible information that will lead to stemming the tide of insecurity across the country. And this is contained in a statement by the Director, Army Public Relations, Brigadier General Onyema Nwachukwu. That has been the news. We will continue with Good Morning Nigeria after this break. Stay tuned.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news, and you have a story with regard to how much Nigeria is currently expending on debt servicing. Our correspondent Alika Akpanachi has details.
The data also shows that the country has spent 3.83 trillion naira on debt servicing payments in 15 months, while a total of 2.93 trillion naira was spent on debt servicing payments in 2021. A total of 896.56 billion naira was spent in the first quarter of 2022. Meanwhile, between October and December 2021, Nigeria spent 310.5 billion naira on domestic debt servicing, while it spent $286.35 million on external debt servicing, giving a total of 429.4 billion naira. However, between January and March 2022, Nigeria spent 668.69 billion naira on domestic debt servicing, while it spent $548.79 million on external debt servicing, giving a total of 896.56 billion naira. With business news, Alika Akpanachi, Arua.
Thank you, Alika, for the business report. Up ahead is newspaper review.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atobi, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kirian.
Yeah, Bayo, you're welcome.
All right, Kirian, let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. The Blueprint newspaper, of course, has political developments, and if we see that on the screen right away, we will kick off with it right. You said Adamu, that's the chairman of APC, storms National Assembly, begs aggrieved APC lawmakers. You have a number of riders to that headline on the story on the APC chairman storming the National Assembly and begging aggrieved APC lawmakers. You have other stories also there on the front page, and we will return to that shortly. Now, let's also take a look at the front page of Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera says, Buhari okayed CBN governor's policies, says Emefiele following model that puts people at heart of policy. That's the lead story for Al Jazeera. And then US and others. That's the kicker. Designate IPOB terrorist group, Buhari insists. Senate to screen new ministerial nominees next week. Obi seeks Wike's support amid fears of defection. 2 senators resigned from APC, PDP, defect to Labour, and NNPP. How we regain freedom from Boko Haram captivity, according to Chibok girls. 2022 Hajj, Kaduna loses 2 intending pilgrims. Details on page 2. In GMO, that's genetically modified organisms, or GMO foods, federal government begins trials for new teller maize variety. Clear.
All right, now let's turn to the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper, above the nameplate, fuel scarcity, marketers rally against NNPC's monopoly. It's on page 19. Senate moves to resolve Supreme Court crisis. NBA demands accountability. That's on page 13 of the Punch. SANU NASU extends strike. Federal government hopeful on NASU. It's on page 15. Support for will be like NSAS movement, according to Victor Ume. It's on page 7. All right, now the lead story on the Punch. 20 senators set to dump APC. Party's majority under threat. 3 riders to that. Angry lawmakers protest loss of tickets. 13 senators ditch ruling party. Adamu summons emergency meeting, says no party leader won't be worried. It's a welcome development. We expect more to join us, PDP declares. That's on page 2. Details of the story. Now, the total story on the Punch newspaper is that of 23 children, 143 other stranded Nigerians return from Libya. Army probes Major's death, denies setting up court martial. It's on page 4. Adamawa man kills friend for demanding 1.5 million loan, or rather 1,500 loan. It's on page 5. Now, hoodlums abduct Kaduna military officer's wife, couple, housemates. That's on page 4. Or Kaduna church attacks politically motivated, according to the presidency. That's on page 13. Kidnappers starved us of food, water, says ex-NFF boss. That's on page 15. That'll be it for Punch. And
you also have just go ahead with bio.
Let's bring in bio, you know.
Well, let's start with the hope that has been given yesterday. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, says the ongoing strike by the Academic Staff Union of Nigeria universities will soon be called off. Dr. Chris Ngige said so after the Federal Executive Council meeting. He also said that there are no plans to establish an alternative payment platform for all labor unions in the tertiary institutions. ASU, which had the grounds with the academic activities since closed academic activities since February 14th, had a grounds with the payment system called IPs. The university lecturers preferred their UTAs as they countered that IPs was shortchanging them. Deliberations are to resume today, Thursday, to consider the progress made by the negotiating teams. It may be recalled that NIDA also had to provide a brief after it tested UTAS, UPPS, and IPs to the committee. The issues before the committee today are the BRICS committee report, renegotiation of the 2009 agreement, test of the payment platforms, and renegotiations of their welfare every 5 years. So there's hope that if all things go through, we may be seeing the end of the strike that started February 14th. And the issue at the Supreme Court, the Senate has mandated its Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights, as well as Legal Matters to wade into the issue that is cropping up at the Supreme Court. A memo signed by 14 justices to the Chief Justice of Nigeria were leaked and put in the public domain. The President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, says that at plenary yesterday that the Senate must have interest in what is going on, and therefore has mandated this committee to follow up through and see how the problems can be solved. The Nigeria Bar Association has also opined that there is a fundamental reform of the administration and the governance and the judiciary. The body of benchers is not left out. They have set up a 7-man committee to look into the matter. The chairman of body of benchers, Wale Olanipeko, says that a judicial advisory committee is to be chaired by former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Mahmoud Mohammed, who will be looking at and engaging parties individually and collectively so that an end can be brought to the impasse there. Well, if you see politicians as migrating birds, this is the time of their migration. The aftermath of the party convention and ambitions frustrated somewhere has now left to migrations elsewhere. The leadership is reporting that there's a gale of deflections over the legislators who were denied tickets. Presently, senators have resigned from their party that elected them and have defected to other parties. the All Progressive Congress and the People's Democratic Party are losing, while NNPP and Labour Party are gaining. The APC had its majority at the Senate reduced to 66, while the minority party PDP also now has 43. There are now 5 minority parties in the House, in the Senate. They are the PDP, the YPP, the Abuja, NNPP, and Labour Party LP. At resumption of plenary, it may be recalled that the Speaker of the House of Representatives had lamented about the high number of members who will not be returning to the Senate. Again?
Yeah, well, I think there are at least 2 issues arising from developments that we are seeing in the National Assembly. That is to say, the defection of senators or House of Reps members who didn't get their party's ticket to contest the 2023 elections and therefore stand a chance of returning. If you defect on that ground, it is not constitutionally viable, because it doesn't amount or it doesn't derive from a division in the party. And the rule is that if you defect on that ground, such as to say you were denied a ticket or for no reason whatsoever, then you lose your seat. One would expect, therefore, that the leadership of the respective chambers would follow through with this. This is when you disclaim those seats vacant. You go and recontest if you wish to recontest. And then INEC, of course, directed to conduct a by-election to fill those vacancies. You can't just say cross-carpeting. We just take it for granted. The constitutional provisions are clear. The grounds on which, and there have been judicial decisions on this, including decisions by the Supreme Court.
I was going to ask the last decision that affected legislators of the Ebonyi State House of Assembly, that the court directed that since they have defected from the party that elected them to another party, they ought to have lost their seats in this. Did they lose their seats? Well,
that's a reporter's business to
the court. The court took its decision. Whether it's implemented or not is a different thing.
That's what I'm saying. Sorry, Killian. Once, let me answer the question, and then I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. Once there's that decision and there is no appeal of that decision stands. All you don't need to do is to serve the leadership of the assembly with the court's decision. Because the leadership of assembly will not read it from the papers. They will have the court records, that's to say the judgment, certified copy, sent to the leadership, and then the sergeant at arms is directed to ensure that those persons do not sit in chambers, nor do they have access to their offices and so on and so forth.
The thing is that we know how it has always been. This is not the first time, politicians are cross-carpeting. It started way back in 1999. It's a norm in the political space in Nigeria, because of course we've discussed on several occasions the issue of party ideology and what have you. What makes one to belong to a particular association or political association? If it's not there, perhaps we are not ripe yet, in terms of one believing that he should stand by an ideology. That is the point. And if you are talking about implementation, most people who are affected are also involved. So there's no way in a state like Ebonyi State, you say almost all the members of the House of Assembly who defected should now lose their seat. That means you organize a fresh election for House of Assembly in that state, because almost, in fact, over 90% of them.
The law is the law. Precisely. And it has to be implemented.
When the law is not being implemented, what do you do? That's why
somebody is failing his duty to implement the law.
Conversation.
And the best persons to exemplify law and its effectiveness are lawmakers. What happened in 1999 you referred to, that defection has started since 1999. What happened was that the majority party in the House or the Senate were the one gaining the defections. Therefore, the Senate President or the Speaker, who ought to have declared the seat vacant, was the one receiving. So he was reluctant to declare that.
Turn the blind eye to
it. Who should not be held responsible for this? That's the question. Who should be held responsible? It's not abating. It's on the increase, and in fact, we should expect more effect.
It doesn't make it right.
See, Killian, the key point, let me just again throw this in. It is contempt for you not to obey the decision of a court. Secondly, the issue is not whether you have ideology or you don't have ideology. Your associational right is not being impaired. You see, you want to go to another political party, no problem. Move to another political party, but the grounds for which you can move and continue to retain your seat in the legislature are spelled out in the Constitution. And there will be judicial decisions on that. If you do not meet any of those constitutions, the requirement is, yes, go to another party, but you forfeit, you lose your seat. The corollary also is that since the primaries were conducted, watch out. I don't know whether they are taking attendance to the legislature. You see empty seats.
Yes.
Empty seats. Yes. So what are these persons doing? Are they representing us or otherwise?
Well, gentlemen, as I said earlier, like we no need for this conversation on this matter because it's something that you cannot heal. It's always been there, and we expect more reflections. That's what how we find where we find ourselves.
Before my time runs out,
time is almost
two other political issues. INEC has given indication to the chairman of the House Committee that they will extend continuous voter registration. But however, they are waiting to appear in court on June 29th to find the outcome. The other development is that the SDP has held a press conference and said they are challenging the result of the election in the kitchen.
That's the normal thing. They should go to court. You know, I'm not surprised. You know, Sheguni is taking that stance. At this point, we'd like to thank you, Bayo.
Thank you too
for being here this morning. Hope to see you again tomorrow. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll start our conversation on the issue of power supply in Nigeria. All right, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. And to begin our conversation, let's now join Oyeyemi Ajayi for the background report to the discussion.
Electricity described as a major catalyst to a nation's drive for industrialization. It is believed that for a remarkable growth in a country's economy, the power sector must not be underrated. However, for years, Nigeria as a country is yet to overcome the quagmire of epileptic power supply despite series of fund investments into it. With the unstable power supply, amounts being paid by consumers have continually increased astronomically. Sadly, just this year alone, the national power grid has collapsed at least 5 times, with some analysts saying more might still be experienced. Many have decried the exorbitant amount being paid by consumers through the estimated billings, tagging it as fraudulent, hence bringing in the metering system. However, the provision of meters to customers became a major challenge to power sector reforms in the country, especially with the sudden upward review of the import levy on electricity meters to 35% from 10% in 2019. With an attendant impact on the cost of the meter asset providers map, given the knock-on effects on metering, President Muhammadu Buhari approved a 1-year waiver of the import levy on electricity meters in 2020. But despite this, the request for payment by end-user customers before the provision and installation of meters was a disincentive for the mass adoption of prepaid meters despite the known benefits. With all the measures put in place, many people describe the power sector as being in the state of comatose, wondering if it will ever be revived. Now, the golden question is, can there ever be an uninterrupted power supply in Nigeria? Well, maybe the guest already seated in the studio will be able to provide definite answers now.
All right, and joining us in the studio here to discuss today's topic in power supply, we have the Executive Director, Independent System Operator, Transmission Company of Nigeria, Engineer Maman Lawal. Engineer Lawal, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
And also with us here is the Executive Secretary, Association of Power Generation Companies, GENCOs, Dr. Joy Ogaji. It's a pleasure, Dr. Ogaji, to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right. We also have with us in the studios Engineer Balarabe Abdullahi. Engineer Abdullahi is General Manager in charge of the brain box, if you may, of the transmission in the power sector in Nigeria, located in Osogbo, Osun State. Engineer Balarabe Abdullahi, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Donald Etim. Now, Etim is Chief Marketing Officer of the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. Donald, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, viewers.
All right. And then also part of this conversation, later on we'll be bringing him in as a regular whenever we are having conversations on energy matters. We're talking about audio or more formal. Once we do have him, we will, of course, bring him online. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria, even though these are not particularly happy times for power consumers. I imagine also for those of you who are also in the power sector, for instance, for the consumers in the Abuja area, you go to buy power credit. I don't know whether you have experienced this. And those who are vending the power credit, they don't even have light. So you're asking yourself, oh, what's going on? So let's begin with Engineer Mama Jimo Lawal, who is one of our regular guests. We've talked about the epileptic power supply in the country, but this year has been most unusual. What is happening?
Thank you very much. Yes, as a matter of fact, the current state of power supply in Nigeria is anomalous to what the trend has been over time. And I'll create just to put it in context. A few months ago when I was here on this program, we had cause to observe that effective 2017, there has been a sustained trend of improvement in grid stability as typified by the collapse incidences recorded over time. We observed in the year 2017 we had 15 collapse incidents. 2018 it reduced to 12, and it took that trend up to the year 2021 when we recorded 2 collapse incidents. As a matter of fact, we have always strived to ensure we do not record any major disturbance, but looking at the current grid configuration, it would appear that we still have a lot to do, despite the fact that a lot, has been done. It's a continuing development exercise, and it has to be sustained. We have every cause to believe also it is being sustained. However, there are certain parameters, critical parameters that we really have not been able to put right, not because the industry players are not doing enough, but it happens that these critical parameters are really beyond the control of the core industry players. So there has to be an integrated approach to all these considerations, because as they put it, the chain is as strong as the weakest link. Concerted effort is being made in this direction. Like I mentioned, it is anomalous. We are in a state of flux. We expect, with the strategies being put in place by the federal government through the Honorable Minister of Power, Engineer Abubakar Aliu, and also the regulatory interventions of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, we would expect sooner than later all this, will become a thing of the past.
Well, I will with you, because you cited that it happened in 2017 on 15 occasions, collapse of the grid. It happened again in 2018. And in 2022, we are also experiencing the same challenge. So that means that perhaps adequate action was not taken to tackle the challenge, because having a grid, maintaining a grid as a nation, you got a rocket science, and we have seen a situation where when we bring up a program like this and table power sector as a major topic, we keep hearing of efforts being made here and there, but Nigerians are no longer interested in all this. Why? Because they believe that if there's a challenge and there are professionals, now you said that the challenge is beyond the industry players, then who else? So just make it clear to Nigerians to understand really what are these particular efforts being made.
Okay, let's put it in context. I had actually tried to portray, the systematic improvement in grid stability. I talked about what the situation was in 2007, how it improved over time up to last year when we recorded 2 collapse incidents from 2017 to 2021. 15 collapse incidents in 2017, and by last year we recorded 2. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't record any. Right? Shouldn't. You see, when I talked about the stakeholders, let's look at the NESI. You start from generation, you talk about transmission, then distribution. But generation, especially the thermal power plants, require gas to power their generators. When you look at gas, there are, we have always talked about how do we ensure that this gas is available when it is needed. And we have different mechanisms for, actualizing this. This is being pursued. It is not as if the gas suppliers are not in the equation. They are. But we have issues related to gas availability. These are certain strategic administrative mechanisms that are required to make this gas available. And that's what the regulatory intervention of the Commission would seek to address. And I think in the next couple of years, in the next couple of yes, this intervention, will be brought to fruition, and we would expect that remarkable changes will begin to emerge as we progress.
Thank you, Engineer Norman. We will return to you. Now, because you were just talking about generation and the thermal power plants, let's bring in Dr. Joy Ogaji, again, another regular face on Good Morning Nigeria whenever we are discussing power matters. What is the, you're already smiling. What is the situation? Let's be realistic. What is the situation? Earlier in the year, we were told that there was low water level, and therefore the hydro plants were affected. Now we hear is a gas issue. Same gas. When we want to brag, we say that Nigeria is not actually a crude oil country. Nigeria is a gas country. And with the war in Ukraine and Russia, and the disruption in gas supplies to Europe, we have also been positioning ourselves to supply gas to Europe. So, and now we are hearing thermal power plants don't have gas. What is the issue?
Good morning, everyone, viewers online, and thank you, NTA, for inviting me. Like you rightly said, I'm a regular here. And if you take an inventory, each time I come, we have not spoken anything outside the same thing we're speaking about today. I was telling somebody that I joined the sector in 2011. Unlike him, I'm sure he has been there for 30 years. I joined in 2011, and when I joined, the same issues we were discussing were the same issues that were being discussed when I joined the sector then. That was pre-privatization. Now, why is it that 9 years nearly, because by October 31st, it will be exactly 9 years post-privatization. Why is it that nearly 9 years post-privatization, mind you, was viewed with the mind that with privatization we'll get to our El Dorado. And now, nearly 9 years post-privatization, we seem not to be close to our El Dorado. In fact, as a matter of fact, our assessment is that the current situation of power is back to pre-privatization times. Exactly. The issues have resonated again and again. So yesterday, even before NTA invited me, because I've been, one of the reasons why you have a PhD is that you can research. So I've been researching, I've been in this sector. Why are we not finding solution? Because I don't want to go and talk about, oh, it is NCT's problem, it is DISCO. Because I've come to realize that there is an endemic problem. All these things, grid collapse, whether estimated billing, overbilling, underbilling, are all symptoms of a major problem that we must investigate, diagnose, and then find solution to. And I have been doing that research, and I've come to find out that the problem in the Nigerian power sector and also in other sectors is akin to the dead horse theory. Now, what is the dead horse theory? The dead horse theory is a theory that is has its origin to the American Indians, Dakota to be specific. And what this ancient theory says is that if you find out that your horse is dead, dismount. So we have a dead horse in the power sector. So we have been trying to make this dead horse ride. And in doing that, instead of coming to the realization that the horse is dead, we have got new horses, dead, all dead. Join them together and see if they can ride. They are not riding. We get whip, koboko, and all different type of whip. And I've been whipping this dead horse because he's dead, he can run. We now get consultants to come and teach us on how the dead horse can run. They can't succeed because the horse is dead. Then we now do training outside the country. Go there to go and learn how a dead horse can walk. And a dead horse is dead. It cannot walk. Okay, now we now bring down the standard. The privatization documents, we bring it low in implementation and enforcement. And say, okay, if we lower the standard so that dead horses can operate, then even at that, it can still not work. Then we threaten to terminate the dead horse. Because he's dead, he doesn't care about termination. So I can go on and on what we have been doing in order to make this dead horse walk or run or whatever. So the power sector has a dead horse. And as I told you, I'm doing my research to find out what is the dead horse. Because clearly, I can't say the power sector is a dead horse. If the power sector is a dead horse, then what do I replace it with? We need the power sector. So we need to find out what is that dead horse. Is it our modus operandi? Because I have reviewed this extra. This extra is one of the best documents we have. From section 1 to 100, it captures everything we need to make the power sector work. I've looked at the market rules. We have one of the best market rules in the world. I've looked at the grid code. The grid code is one of the best. I've looked at the market procedures and various documents. Mention them. Is it the performance agreement? I've looked at the PPA, the vesting contracts, and the dead horse that I am almost locating is our modus operandi. Now, let me give you, for example, if the extra says that we should have an independent regulator, for instance.
Extra meaning Electric Sector Power Reform Act.
Yes, yes, Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005. If, according to section 34 of this book, you should get an independent regulator. Independent, as the word English means independent. Now, how do you get a regulator that is independent? How were they appointed? If they are politically appointed, then you don't expect independence. Because what we've been doing is eating our cake and then still expecting it on the table. Because if you are politically appointed, these regulators, not adhering to Section 34, which talks of meritocracy and competitiveness in appointing them, how do you expect them to be independent? Because he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So this is just an example of the dead horse we're looking at.
Well, that theory, I think we will dissect it further in the course of this conversation. Because many Nigerians will believe that you are speaking in parables, but all the same, you have made a very good point with respect to the fact that you have personally, tried to investigate and diagnose, but what is remaining is that of a preferring solution, or rather, the solutions being preferred, being put in place or being put into practice. The documents you mentioned that we have in the power sector are usually Nigerians' way of tackling issues. We are good at articulating beautiful documents, but when it comes to implementation, we begin to have issues. And I want to bring in the team here, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. If there are challenges, in the distribution of power in Nigeria, have you people been able to investigate and diagnose this challenge? If yes, what are the challenges and how best, could those challenges be tackled?
Thank you very much for the question, and good morning, viewers, once again. When we joined, when we resumed as the current management of Abuja Electricity Company, the first thing we did was to try and get a full scope understanding of what the issues are, not just within the industry, but also within the company. We dimensioned these challenges internally and externally. We found that as an organization, as a business, there were systems we needed to upgrade, to work on and upgrade. And part of even these systems, you permit me to use the term, our people. So we needed to fix people, talent management issues. We needed to optimize our internal technology base to be able to accommodate and do more. Externally, we found that there were issues about network visibility. There's first what came up initially, the absence of a SCADA system. The SCADA system allows you to have full visibility of your network end to end. Beyond there being no SCADA system, we also found that practically all our feeders are overloaded. As we speak, we are working on deloading those feeders. We took several field trips and we found as well that there were illegal network extensions or expansions. So you find connections and power lines that exist physically on land, and they do not exist on the network configuration that we have on the system. Beyond this as well, we discovered as a result of regular outages, vandalization was at its peak. And this is a major concern for us at this time. So these are some of the key issues we found. And there were no spares, there were no accessories to fix devices that have gotten spoiled in the process. No replacement parts. Transformers were knocked off. Community will tell you we lost our transformer, or ADC came to carry our transformer for repairs and they've not been replaced for 2 months, 3 months. What personally piqued me as a customer or marketing communications person was the fact that across board, our service centers were completely dilapidated. So you look at how a service center looks, and then they tell you this is how much money comes through from this place. First, you ask yourself, how does a consumer or a customer get to this place and part with his money? What level of comfort do you offer him? We identified all of these challenges. Just on the technical and commercial part of it, we prioritized 40 of them. And we gave ourselves a timeline to say, within 2 to 3 months, we must fix all of these things, even as we have other industry-wide challenges. So like Dr. Gaji pointed out, I went for my first radio show after joining some months ago, went the second time, went the third time. I came back, I was troubled by my conscience. I called my colleagues and said, look, we can't keep talking about low generation. Because some of these things I've heard even as a child. We can't keep talking about this. These are things that are there and will be there with us for a while until we fix the system. Let us address what we can address in bits and pieces and give the customer hope. Because the most vilified Nigerian, outside of the Nigerian police officer, is the popularly known NEPA man. We are very vilified. We do not have a right to talk back because we committed to giving service and we have not delivered that service the way it should be. So these are some of the challenges, and as an organization, we have taken steps. We are working on some of these projects, and to give credibility and credence to what we're doing. There's this popular notion outside there by customers that, oh, the average disco supplies power to the rich. They're taking power from the poor. And it's really not true. So we started these intervention projects from the rural markets and the semi-urban areas. Within the larger franchise, we have had to work on places as far away as Masarawa, Lafia, where we had improved power. We went in there with metering. We ran a service-based tariff campaign just to optimize people's awareness before migrating them. Last week or two, we were in Bida to commission an injection substation. But around here, I'm very concerned about the area around Karu, Maraba, Jikwe, and all of these other areas. Because the customers there have been the most shortchanged. They've had very few hours of power. There were areas that never had power at all. Until 3 months ago, we looked at our network configuration and decided to manage the little supply we have a little differently. We said, let's start from 2 hours to 4 hours progressively, and then maybe we will improve it. By the time we run the length of the interventions we are having currently, most of them will come to full fruition by about 2 months at most. We will have improved, not just improved supply, but also more reliable supply. Because our systems, when we deload the systems, when we deload the feeders, they become more stable. Around Karu, all the way to Jikwe, we have a deloading project where we bring another feeder called K6. The simple common sense we are applying there is taking residential customers off, separating them from industrial or SME customers, so that both streams of feeders are similarly dedicated.
Okay. Donald Etting, thank you very much for the explanation. I'm sure that consumers in the Abuja electricity distribution franchise area will be pleased to hear what you are saying. But just keep this at the back of your mind. You are a new management team.
Yes,
did you inherit a dead horse? That's one question we're going to ask you. Because following up on Joy Ogaji's theory, because all the things you are saying, feeders overloaded, XYZ, the previous owners, before the debt became too heavy for them and then the creditors came in, were busy collecting electricity tariff every day and giving excuses as to why they couldn't supply power. So you will tell us the state of that dead horse, whether it was already decayed before you came in. That will be later on in the course of the conversation. Now, we understand that Odion Mofama is with us now. Let's just see if we can, if your viewers can see him on the screen. Odion Mofama, energy expert and CEO of New Hampshire Group. Odion, I'd like to have you on the program this morning. Okay, our engineers will work on the audio, and once that is sorted out, we'll come back to you for your first shot. Now, we understand the audio is fine, but I want to come to the studios now and bring in the general manager of the National Control Center at Oshobo. That's Engineer Balarabe Abdullahi. That's where the National Grid has its heart. And of course, you've heard the various comments by the guys and complaints also by Nigerians. Why are you guys having these epileptic seizures at your control center?
Thank you. Good morning, viewers. We at the National Control Centers, we are shoulders with the responsibility to operate and manage the grid. But what we realized recently, there are a lot of constraints within the discos and also the gencos and also the transmission lines. And before we have stability of the grid, then definitely the generation, that is the supply and demand, have to be at equilibrium. So there are so many factors, and those factors are arranged to generate, and they are subject to gas constraints and also water management. When there's no water in the lake, then definitely the capacity of generation at that particular time is not there. And the expected generation also, when there is no gas, then definitely the number of units on the grid will be so limited. So those are the issues that we're facing. And sometimes, especially during the rainy season, when there are tripping of 33 kV feeders, then definitely there are going to be a backslash to the grid, then definitely there are going to also be an issue. And at the same time, multiple trippings of transmission lines because of faults to affect the grid. So that is the reason why sometimes the expected generation and supply to consumers are so limited. So those are the issues we are facing now. And we at NCC, sometimes we find out we talk to both the discos and generating stations within second, minute, and hourly to make sure that everything goes according to plan to stabilize the grid. And when we discover there is this stop on the grid, then definitely we have to go load shedding, massive load shedding, to make sure that we don't lose the grid. So those are the issues we are facing now.
These issues did not start today, from all indications, and from what all our guests have said so far. We've been living with it for a long time now. Where I'm raising this concern is the fact that when one knows that there is a challenge, the usual thing is to devise a means of tackling the challenge, especially the one that has been protracted, such as this issue of grid collapse. When are the efforts being made? Because from all indications, this might just continue, right? And we are growing in population, and many estates being established across the nation, and those estates will be powered. So it's like there's an expansion going on, while the grid is suffering from all the factors that you have enumerated. So, what is the way out of this occasional collapse of the grid, which you control?
But the way out is how to manage the grid is to provide an adequate SCADA system to monitor the grid. And now recently, the TCM management were able to deploy a stopgap solution by using the IoT, that is Internet of Things, which for us to monitor the megawatts, megawatt, current and voltage of all the power stations. So that will help us to manage the grid. I think all the three sectors, the transmission, generation and transmission, they knew the problem, and what we were told, they were trying to resolve it, because there are several meetings called by NEC during the NEC meeting and the previous one to discuss the challenges, and we have the hope, and also based on our interaction with the GENCOs, the effort they are putting to get the gas. Then definitely, as you said, really is worrisome. It's worrisome, but they are trying their best, and we're putting more effort to make sure that everything is better than before. We knew Nigerians are not happy. It's a sad event. When massive load shedding comes, a lot of feeders were affected. People are out for a very long time. But I think recently, I think it was 1st July, there is this partial activation we have to be much engaged, so that when there are issues, there will be penalty. But I think we have to sit up. We have to expand more our network, because now presently we operate a single grid, and when there is small distortion on the grid.
Is it ideal to operate a single grid for a nation? What is being done in other times? So because invariably in those areas, those countries, where we have steady power supply, they cannot be relying on one grid. So why are we there? Is it not possible to expand the grid or something? Well, you can come in there.
Thank you very much. Yes, as he explained, grid stability is shaped by a number of factors. If the integrity of the grid is compromised, then we have problem with reliability. I explained. For you to have a system with big inertia, a system that when you try to shake, as it were, it doesn't, give it will appear to remain unperturbed. Okay, this integrity is shaped principally by the generation. Not only generation, you have the transmission system. In the power system operation, you have the consideration of operational safety, grid reliability, and resource optimization. We have had issues with resource optimization because we have so much generation base, but substantial amount of this is not available. Of course, the generators can explain this. It is all encompassing. I had to mention really that only an end-to-end consideration of the issues will solve the problem, and the stake players, the industry players are on top of this. They're on top of this. We just have to put this in context. It's not as if nothing is being done. A lot is being done. That's why I use the language anomalous, that this situation is anomalous. If you don't have adequate generation, grid reliability becomes an issue. Reliability is about, the degree of certainty that your system will perform up to the expected standard under certain conditions. If generation is inadequate, the transmission system is compromised, and the distribution end, the demand side management is suboptimal, then the integrity is compromised. When you have the least perturbation, such as the tripping of a line or the massive tripping of distribution feeders on account of stormy weather, you lose the grid. So these are some of the issues. But we need a grid that is automated to be able to tackle this effectively. And there has to be resource optimization across board. That's why that synergy is required. We need this collaboration to ensure that we have a grid that is operated reliably, a grid that is adequately optimized.
When it was NEPA, but we having all this analysis of all this optimization on the. I mean, I'm not being cynical or sarcastic, but you know, how many times? Yes, I recall. I mean, the years past, you said, look, there was a shutdown at Osogbo, but we couldn't be having this on a regular basis, and we're saying, oh, generation is an issue, transmission is an issue, and then distribution is also an issue, because now we've also been working on the transmission lines. I'm just saying this, Engineer Maman, of course your explanation is noted, but just for our viewer out there to understand precisely just what is happening. Is it that this privatization or this unbundling is a challenge? Is it the dead horse, as Ogaji says? Now let's bring in Odion Mofoma, an energy expert and a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria whenever we are discussing power issues. Odion, once again we welcome you to the program. Well, it looks like probably you are living in an Eldorado where you have stable power supply, but for the rest of us, we do know that the power situation this year has been horrible, and we have been listening to all the reasons why this is happening. What is your reading of this darkness that we've been plunged into?
I actually feel the frustration of Dr. Ogaji and the frustration of millions of Nigerians that have had to deal without power. Particularly when diesel is now above 800 naira per liter. So industries, businesses, homes have had to suffer. I know banks that shut their head office by 5 p.m. They closed down because of power. So it is this year, the power situation has had an adverse effect on everybody entirely. And like Joy has, like Dr. Ogaji has said, 9 years after privatization, we're in a state where the situation of the power sector is as it was pre-privatization, despite the fact that over 3 trillion naira has been invested in the sector over the last 9 years. So one starts to really wonder, are we heading in the right direction? Are we stalled? Is it comatose, as your report put it? Or we can still make a way out of it? And just to summarize for the benefit of the viewers out there, I think to my mind, there are about 5 issues that have affected the sector and still affects the sector. The first is the lack of investments over time. The ADC director spoke about overloaded feeders and all the rest. It's shocking that 9 years after all the feeders, after privatization, second management in ADC, the feeders are still overloaded. We have the absence of contracts and the non-enforcement of even the few contracts in the market from a regulatory perspective. We have poor corporate governance across the industry. I mean, it cuts across everything. So when you're managing the corporate governance structures of the stakeholders is weak, then you're seeing some of these effects. Sadly, is affecting everything. We are also seeing structural issues with the way and manner the Nigerian electricity supply industry is structured. The national grid system, unfortunately, cannot work and will not work. And sadly, that's where all of these investments have been going into to stabilize a national grid system that is not feasible as in the country we are in. Abuja cannot solve our power problem, I'm sorry to say. We can do all these discussions in Abuja, but it will not solve our power problems. We then have to start to look at solutions. And the last part is actually greed and some human factors. I think greed plays a key role in all of this, because you'd find out that certain stakeholders, due to greed, the right investments are not made, and then it affects the entire network, right? But I think we focused enough on the problems. Viewers must be overwhelmed by all the problems. How do we get out of this whole situation is really my focus here. And I think it's time to start to look at a situation where we bring in the states, the municipalities, the local governments, and even cooperatives into the electricity business. We cannot have one single line market where it's generation, transmission, distribution, just one line, and then if you don't get power supply in that line, you're out of it. I know communities that are enjoying 24/7 electricity. they're not connected to the national grid. So it's false to say that some people are not we are all suffering from this power situation. There are people that are not suffering from this power situation because they are not connected to the national grid. So we must start to disengage ourselves from a national grid system that is not stable. Somebody talked, the MD Oshobo mentioned that one small perturbation of the grid knocks off the entire grid. We can't have a situation whereby somebody goes to, out of vandalism, sheer sabotage, will cut down a transmission tower, and then the whole country goes into darkness. That's national, in fact, that's terrorism. So we can't expose ourselves and keep investing in a structure and an infrastructure where anybody can bring it down and the whole country goes on its knees. We're about to enter into we're in the political situation environment now. You're going to see a lot of these grid collapses because people may want to score political points and point to some form of issues. Some people may also want to cash out because obviously if national grid goes down, investments have to be rallied and corralled around to make sure it works. We can't be in that situation. That's why it's important that the new legislation, the constitutional amendment by the National Assembly that now empowers states to go into generation, transmission, distribution is fast-tracked at the states' houses of assembly. They need to push that law. Even if it's just that amendment, they need to push it fast so that states can come into the business and they can start to make regulations for electricity within their states. The other thing I think we also need to focus on is to start to look at a situation where we can enforce contracts. I was very happy when the NEC chairman talked about contracts now going to be signed into the entered into by parties. We wait for July 1st to happen. Let me see how those contracts will be activated. We have waited for this contract to be activated for over 8 years. So it's gladdening that finally maybe this contract will be entered into. But behind contracts, there's also the enforcement of the contract. So I think it's up to NERC to now tell Nigerians and show Nigerians that they can enforce some of this contracts, because without it, it will be hard.
Odion, let me stay with you and ask you to explain some of the 4 points that you itemized. As a matter of fact, I picked interest in one aspect of it, which is in terms of structure. What do you mean by that? Because the structure we are in now presently doesn't seem to be working, and if we have to continue with that, it will appear that we already signed collapse of grid at all points. And when you mentioned the fact that some people are enjoying 24/7 power supply, those who are not connected to the national grid, of course we also wonder about the preponderance of that section of Nigerians who are enjoying steady life, and what did they do? And what could other section of Nigerians could do as well to enjoy 24/7 without being connected to the national grid?
In terms of structure, the faulty market structure, our market structure is built around a national grid system, a single national grid system, right? So that means electrons flow from one end and then the cash flow comes from the other end and services all the parties. In addition, we've created monopolies at the distribution side of the end of the business. So only Lagos has 2 distribution companies, struggling to even meet the needs of Lagos. But other discos cover like 4 states, 5 states. For instance, the Enugu distribution company covers the entire southeast region. That is a very big market, right? So you have a situation where these people cannot meet the needs of the customers there. They are overwhelmed, right? So from that market structure, a single national grid system, every single issue, either at the generation side, the transmission side, or the distribution side, affects the entire country. So that is the structure of the market, and it's so faulty. The people that are enjoying 24/7 power, so for instance, go to Bonny Island. Bonny Island, they have a 15 megawatt power plant, which they generate, transmit, and distribute within the island of Bonny. That has been in place for years, even before privatization. And that service is extremely reliable. There are a number of clusters similar to the Bonny Island model. So what I think is for us to move forward, we need to start to look at distributed energy systems, where people are we're looking at franchised areas where generation transmission and distribution happens within that cluster, right? If you take the cell phone analogy, MTN did not start to roll out base stations in one single go. They had clusters, they rolled out in clusters. We now need to look at the power situation and say, look, let's look at economic clusters, let's look at commercial clusters, let's look at residential clusters. How can we infuse generation in there? How can we get dedicated generation to meet the distribution needs of those entities? Until we start to look at that structure, our reliance on a national grid system will not get us anywhere. So that's what I mean by looking at a faulty situation and trying to remedy it. And states play a key role in this structure. States need to start to make their regulations, because when they make regulations, that will effectively ensure that people and investors and communities are able to invest and manage the electricity infrastructure and supply within their areas.
All right, Odile, thank you very much. We'll return to you later on in the course of the conversation. Now, back to our other guest, Joy Ogaji. The issue has been raised about transmission. When I read the story myself, I was alarmed. But of course, it was at the peak of the grid collapse, where it was stated that Nigeria's power generation dipped to just 9 megawatts. 9 from, it was said, 3,700. It was a widely reported story, and up to this moment there has been no rebuttal of that story. Now, we also heard at some point that, oh, the reason why there's low generation is that the thermal power plants, that's to say the power plants that rely on gas, were undergoing maintenance. And then you ask yourself why all thermal power plants should be undergoing maintenance almost simultaneously. And of course, there's also the issue about Kanji and Shiruru and others, where you have, they say the low water. This is rainy season, and why we should be having low water levels at this time is an issue. What is it that the GENCOs are having in terms of generation? Because again, the argument is that if there isn't sufficient generation, then there can't be grid stability. Are there dead horses also in the GENCOs?
Okay.
Are there dead horses also in the GENCOs? So you give us, because we have to be elaborating on that theory of the dead horse.
Thank you so much. Like I said in my opening remark, the issues cut across all the segments within the power sector. And I did not exclude any part when I started, and I said we all need to identify the dead horse and deal with the dead horse so that we can put the dead horse to rest and get a live horse to ride us. And my colleague Odile, from when he made his own comment, has lashed on some of those areas that are responsible for the dead horse theory. And until we deal with those issues, we will not. So, answering your questions, why or what are the issues GENCOs have and whether there is enough generation, I have brought, and this report is based on the national grid, because every day I have a staff that captures what NCC projects. Sometimes the data does not really match, because when I see that, like as at yesterday 7:30 in the evening, the grid was on their site, they were reporting 700 megawatts. I quickly send message to NCC. I say it can't be possible.
NCC, not national.
Okay, National Control Center.
That's right.
Yes, NCC means National Control Center at Osun State, Osogbo. So I send message to them. I've not gotten the response yet. That sorry, by 6 o'clock it was over 3,000. How come from 6 o'clock and by 7:15, 7:30 we are about 700 with about only 6 generation plants on the grid, and they've not responded to me. Now that brings me to what my colleague also Etin latched on. We don't see anything. The power sector, we see what is happening through the eyes of NCC. So it's whatever they show on their dashboard that we see. And so we don't really know what is going on. When I saw that, I checked with my Gencos and they said, we are on the grid, we're generating. For example, I also give you a case in point. The last comment that you made on why is it that most of the generation companies were on maintenance. That was reference to a publication, a press conference, a press release issued by TCN through their media aid, which printed out 14 generation companies not generating, and that is why there was no generation. And the Gencos were not happy and said, come, please respond. Because as a matter of fact, as at that day, Shiroro was generating and was on the grid, but Shiroro was on that list. And several other power plants. So I am not putting the blame. That's why I said when I came here, I don't want to blame anybody. Because they are trying. The Oshobo staff, I know them. In fact, they are like juggling, I don't know, so many balls at the same time as he explained. Because to maintain grid integrity, you have to check the volume of generation coming. You have to check the integrity of the transmission system because they too have issues. And transmission is with government. They are trying, but then, you know, we have a bureaucratic system. So even when they say, see, this social line needs to be maintained, it has to go through so long a process. But power is a dynamic one. And so power is a dynamic infrastructure that we must focus on. And so one of the things that we need to do is to understand that power is critical. The power sector is a bedrock upon which every other industry revolves. So when we have that understanding, and any government or the current government will focus on power, say, come, if I'm able to resolve power, I will resolve educational issue. I will resolve technological, because even the telecommunication relies on power. So the security relies on power. So we need to come to that realization. I brought this thing, I gave to your group, but they said maybe they cannot project, so Nigerians can't see it, but you can see it.
Yeah, you can speak to it.
Okay, so this is, I captured from 2013 to end of May, because June has not ended. So when on the day of privatization, generation that was available was 3,427. So by December 31st, generation company have ramped up to 4,214 within just 2 months. And by 2014, they have ramped up to 6,154. And by 2015, they have moved from 6,154 to 6,516. 616. And by 2017 we were in over 7,000. 2017 we came down to 6,008. If anybody recall, that was around the time the Niger Delta militants bombed the pipeline and we had gas issues. It took the vice president to go down there and they did some things and we got back gas. Now 2018 power generation went up to 7,500. 2019 we were still around that 7,381. Now 2020 we had available capacity of 7,792. 2021 power started coming down, and that came to 6,003 something. 2022 as at this May we are on 5,000. So power is coming down, the availability is coming down. Why? While I mentioned availability, utilize means what was taken. In 2013, only 3,001 something was taken out of the 4,002. In 2014, out of the 6,000 something, only 3,419 was taken. In 2015, out of the 6,006 over 600, only 3,006 was taken. So without boring you, if you check that column, the highest we took was 2020, and that was 4,000.
Okay. So as at last year, what was taken?
Okay, as at last year, what were utilized was 4,118.
I think you have done a good explanation of that. You know, it means that we have never exceeded retransmission of anything above 4,000. We have. That's we have. Yes. Well, whatever it is. Sorry, madam. You know, time is on our side. You know, because you know we can keep talking about it all year long. True. You know, the most important thing and the good reason why we gathered here this morning is actually to see how we can propose solutions, and of course to see how we can do it the other way, because the way we've been doing it perhaps seems not to be working. That's the implication. All right, we take a short break now. When we come back, we will continue with the conversation. You are watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. All right, we're glad to have you back on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We have been dissecting issues concerning power supply in Nigeria, which of course you all know has been epileptic in recent times. And what we're doing here this morning is to see how possible these experts here can propose solution to some of the issues concerning power supply. Let's respond to Brian Babulahi once more.
Yeah, Kieran, I mean, it's a very pertinent issue. Engineer Abdullahi, help us understand what's going on. I know that Engineer Mama may also pitching. The NCC, that's the National Control Center at Oshogbo, is the one that interfaces between the GENCOs and the TCN, that's the transmission company, which then goes on to the distribution. What is the state of our transmission capacity? Because sometime in the past we heard of investments coming in from Siemens. They were going to get a loop, you know, for the national grid and so on and so forth. And yet, is that same loop that is collapsing from time to time? Are there issues around the transmission that continues to bother you guys at the control center?
Yeah, we presently, I think our transmission line can wheel almost 7,300 megawatt. And expanding the grid, just building towers, stringing the conductor lines in a very large scale, it takes time. It takes time. You have issue of right-of-ways, compensation and the rest. It takes time. I think the TCM management, we are working on it. It takes a little time. And what most bothers us now is how do you utilize or how do you sustain the present transmission line? And based on the records, as you said, that the megawatt is generation is going down, and because as it results to so many factors. Because the more you generate, the transmission will and the distribution are not there, then definitely there are going to be issue on the grid. And sorry, I want to make a correction. There's no point, there's no in any way that our generation goes to 9 megawatt. It's not possible. It will have, the grid will have gone. Yes, maybe the process of going to collapse, that's when that figure is captured, but it's wrongly have to be captured that way. And also, as of last year, 1st March 2021, I think we attained the all-time peak of 5,801.40 megawatt. So it's an improvement, because at that particular time we felt people were enjoying, people have been calling, enjoying their slide, and if in Nigeria of a population of 200 million, talking of 5,000, we felt the residential, because residentials are a major consumer now, this time, because most of the industry, as we said, if the power quality is not there, like maybe the voltage and the frequency, then definitely their generators or their equipment is sensitive to those things, then it cannot work. So I think government are trying, they are doing their best. Investment, we expect the investment out to is a long-term investment because of the large areas of of Nigeria, and definitely it takes a long time.
I'm not going to short, please. Yeah. For you to add to what you're trying to explain. Is it possible to expand the capacity of the grid in terms of further infrastructure, provision of infrastructure, to expand the capacity of the grid so that when it's loaded, we say it's up to 9 megawatts, it's not possible that it would have gone. Can it be expanded to accommodate more?
Yeah, the expansion, as long as the population is expanding, the demand is expanding, it's possible to expand. But as I said, it's not something that within the shortest time, the expansion will have been started so many years back so that we can meet to this. But presently, the expansion, if the expansion as it's continuing, and management are into it, it will take a long some years before we started enjoying the expansion. But what we want is how we sustain the present situation. Like
sustain the present situation of darkness or what?
No,
of resource optimization. If I may come in, yes, it's good to expand, and we have been expanding. The Biancos have been expanding. TCN has been expanding. As at yesterday, the grid generation, I said this advisedly, grid generation installed capacity stood at 13,014.4 megawatts. But the highest availability we have had over time is about 7,651 megawatts, and that was in 2014. That is available generation, not actual generation. The highest in terms of actual generation, the so-called all-time peak, is 5,801.5 megawatts, and this was attained on the first day of March last year. You see, resource optimization is crucial, and it has direct correlation with the maintenance culture. We have often advised that we have to downplay this primitive approach to maintenance, where we wait for equipment to fail before we attend to them. There has to be that proactive, technique in tackling the maintenance issues. You should be able to predict failure. You should be able to predict incipient failures before they degenerate into full-blown faults, so they are averted. This is the kind of maintenance strategy we have in the aviation industry. That's why the aircraft can be kept up there for 10 hours without any fear that it may fail. This type of culture, if adopted across board, will ensure that the equipment do not fail frequently, and when they fail, and that's the duration is that's the kind of culture. That's the kind of culture they have elsewhere, where they're able to generate 30,000 megawatts, and there's no blink in power supply. Audio Mopoma raised an issue, and I think it's a policy consideration, that the current single national grid is not working and would never work. Your comment? Of course, I wouldn't. I appreciate his contribution. He must have said that really out of frustration. That is understandable. It can work. It works as well. Why not? It can. In other climes, it's a good grid, very well. But that does not preclude the so-called mini grid. There is a regulation to that effect. The Regulatory Commission came up with some interventions, okay, around this mini grid concept: embedded generation, distributed generation, captive power stations. Nope, I mean, you have the latitude to go into all this. By and large, the mainstay of electricity supply the world over is the grid type. And you will have a grid that is interconnected with other grids, like in the US. They don't have only one grid, but of course, US is quite a large economy. When you look at the fundamental metrics, you will not be in a position to compare Nigeria with the US as it stands. Okay, but let's just take the case of simple computer networking, where you have several computers and you have a big printer connected to all the computers, and you are able to access these printers from the comfort of your office. But engineering is about economy as well. It is. It can work. All we need. I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, we're getting pressed for time. Okay, sorry. All we need is to grow and develop alongside. Growth is not synonymous with development. And this has to be taken alongside by all sector players.
Okay.
End to end.
End to end. All right, Engineer Mama, thanks. Just before we kept Donald Etin waiting earlier. Donald, please, I would like you to respond to one issue that Omofoma raised, namely corporate governance of the discourse. Corporate governance is at the heart of the management of an enterprise. And earlier you talked about the state of infrastructure and facilities, feeders and so on and so forth. And I was asking whether you guys, the new management, inherited a dead horse. Now, what is wrong with the corporate governance of this? Because that's one. Very quickly, because we won't have the opportunity of coming back to you again. I had raised this some days ago on Good Morning Nigeria. Namely, we were told when they were doing all this tariff increase, you know, every time we heard MITO, multi-year tariff order. Well, at one time they said service reflective tariff. Another time they said it will be based on the number of hours we get electricity. Now that we are not getting electricity for the number of hours for which we are buying credit, what is the remedy for the consumer?
Okay, thank you again for the question, sir. Very briefly and specifically, in terms of corporate governance, I can say as of today, the management that is in operation at Abuja Electricity, which I'm part of, operates at the highest level of governance, not just recommended, but also driven by best practice. The management is currently supervised by a board that is then populated by well-known and credible industry leaders, not just from power sector, but across the finance world. So, to that extent, I can assure either investors or customers that we operate at the highest level of corporate governance, and our books are open for people to see. Then, going to the next level of issue, which is tariffs and all of that. Before we talk about tariffs and maybe even bills, the issue is we need to improve power. And what we have done, in addition to the familiar things I spoke about, which is in terms of the loading feeders, you know, Odion alluded to lack of investment as one of the issues. We've made critical, credible investments in the last 3 months, running into billions of naira. So over and above those deloaded feeders, we are constructing new feeders that will improve supply. We are also talking to a handful of embedded power developers. Engineer Lawa spoke to that. The law allows us to speak or to explore those options. So Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, as of today, is exploring ways of getting embedded power that will allow us to serve certain critical niches, either residential or commercial.
All right, before we go, let's get to Odion once more. I earlier asked a question to Blayaba Abdullahi, the GM of the National Control Center, you know, on the issue of the possibility of expanding the capacity of the grid that we have in existence now. And it also boils down to the issue of investment. I wanted to expatiate on this issue of investment. Are you talking about private sector investment or government investment in the power sector? Just in a few seconds, please. The point is, government doesn't have the resources to make the kind of investment that is needed to expand the national grid as is. And Alawan also talked about maintenance issues. So by the time you couple investments, massive investments, and the need for replacements and maintenance, you find out that's why the national grid system, as we have the single national grid system as we have, cannot work. What needs to happen is for states to get into the transmission business. States need to start to build their own transmission grids that will supply power to their states. The existing GENCOs can supply the state grids, but the point is our reliance on the national grid cannot work because of the absence of investments. There's a manpower debt, and number 3, we have a distribution infrastructure that is weak and can't take all that load. So we need to have multiple grids. We need to have more people come into the distribution side of the business, either as franchisees, either from a mini grid perspective, either as electricity cooperatives, or either as state electricity grids, distribution grids. That is the way to solve the problem. But a reliance on the national grid system that the federal government is funding, does not have the resources to fund, keeps borrowing, and there's grid and human capacity factors affecting it, will never work.
All right, Odio Mofoma, we would like to appreciate you, lady and gentlemen. We've not just talked around these issues. I believe that policy makers and implementers will have picked up some ideas of what needs to be done. There is a message out there, Kirian, to the state houses of assembly. The National Assembly has already passed a set of amendments to the 1999 Constitution as earlier previously amended, which will now have a set of the 5th alteration, and included in that, of course, is the linking of the removal of capacity of power to generate, transmit, and distribute power from the exclusive list to the concurrent, and we do hope that the State House of Assembly will take a look at that in terms of their consideration of the various bills under the 5th alteration. And of course, there is a dead horse theory that Joy Ogaji also talked about, namely failure of regulation. And of course the capacity of the regulatory authority. The other guests have also indicated what the challenges remain with and what is being done. We are hoping that in the next couple of days or weeks, things will get better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So on that note, we conclude this edition of the program. But before we do that, let's appreciate once more Engineer Maman Lawal, who is of course the Executive Director, Independent System Operator, Transmission Company of Nigeria. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Joy Ogaji, who came up with this dead horse theory, we're going to expatiate on that, in future. Thank you indeed, Joy.
I wanted to correct that. I didn't say failure of regulator.
Okay, we got that. We got that.
All I said was that we need to investigate the modus operandi,
exactly.
And I gave example, for example, appointment processes. What do we?
All right, thank you, Joy. No time to go for that. Thank you, Joy. Thank you indeed. Donald Etim, Chief Marketing Officer, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, we also like to thank you for coming. And of course, Mr. Odion or Morphoman, we appreciate your contribution this morning on the subject matter. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And we also had Blarebe Abdullahi, the General Manager, National Control Center, or Shobo. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We appreciate your tuning in. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock, for a fresh edition of the program. I'm Kingsley Osado.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. Have a great day.